Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com, with a quick recap for all of those people who may have missed recipes. This is a recap of all the recipes I've shared for the month of February, year 2025. Let's start things off with that stewed oxtail I did. Well, we started it on the stove, we finished it in the oven with that rich, comforting gravy, wine-based. Then we took leftovers when we made corn mutton with cabbage. And how can one forget that tandoori chicken fried rice that I did? Perfect. Of course, you can't do corn mutton with cabbage without corn mutton. So we did the stewed corn mutton. And you know, in under 15 minutes, you had a wicked dish. It was a long winter. February was bitter cold and a lot of snow. So what did I do for a little comfort of home? Take me to a resort in the Caribbean. Coconut shrimp. Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of American football. Not what we call football in the Caribbean, but football, NFL football. So I did some hot honey buffalo wings. It was all about Super Bowl. Now going back traditional, we had two traditional recipes there, which you're real old school. Star fruit and carambola. Some of you call it five finger. I did a sort of a stew with tanya. Some of you call it cocoyam, I believe. But these are the recipes I've shared back in February. I hope you all enjoyed. So if you missed it, this is your opportunity to catch up. All right? This is the one I'll be putting to use today. Beautiful flavors, yeah? And if you don't know, Steve, the owner, is the first and probably the only black Jamaican winemaker, not just in Ontario, but all of Canada. If you've been following me for a while now on social media, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or the website at CaribbeanPod.com, where the printable recipes are usually found, you will know I have shared several recipes with oxtails before. It's one of them things, you know, even though the price went up and everybody's trying to, you know, kind of jump the scene with the whole oxtail thing now, it's something we've been doing for a very long time in the Caribbean, especially in Jamaica. Now here's the thing, this is unlike any sort of Caribbean recipe you'll see, and I'll explain why later on. But what we're going to do is we have 3 pounds of oxtail here, and you can see the sizes that it's been cut up. So the bigger pieces has been cut into, well, 1-inch pieces and in half as well, and then the tail is about the tail parts itself, it's about 1.5 inches long. Just grab my cloth here. And unlike in previous recipes where we seasoned and marinated it overnight, I'll just go in a bit tighter so you can see what's going on there. This one is a little bit different. What we're going to do is start it on the stove, and then we're going to slowly braise it in the oven. Just for convenience sake, yeah? Salt, and we will add more salt later on, so just to compensate a bit more. Salt, black pepper, and at this point you're going to say, well, Uncle Chris, gone Caucasian all the way here, and he's just doing the recipe like all them other chefs they see online and stuff. Well, later on you'll see the seasoning. But flour, we will add some all-purpose flour. And by the way, the oxtail, 3 pounds as I said, and it has been washed with cool water and the juice of 2 limes. If you don't have limes, you can use lemons, or if you wanted, you can use vinegar, a cup of vinegar with some cool water, and you would wash it. All I will do now is give that a good toss in there, and the flour will do 2 things. It will help us in the browning process to help get a crust, but more importantly, later on when we start braising it in the oven, that flour is going to you know, sort of a thickener, so our gravy will be nice and thick, because we're not putting butter beans or anything else in here. What you can put later on is some carrots, but that's totally up to you. So all I'm going to do now, I always do that, you know, all over the stove, flour going all over the place, but anyhow, I done already into it. So there we go. Yeah, notice how nice and coated. I've got my oven proof, yes, something with a lid that can go into the oven. Preheat your oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil in there, medium flame, and all we're gonna do is start adding pieces of that oxtail directly to the pot here, yeah? And what we're gonna do is try not to overcrowd the pot, and maybe do it in about 2 or 3 batches, yeah? And all you want to do is sort of brown it on all sides. Yeah, I'm going to do 2 batches, I believe, yeah? And try not to shake it or anything. Give it a minute or 2 after you put it in there. Then you're going to start moving them around every couple minutes until you get a sort of a sear on all sides. Remove them and continue. About 3 or 4 minutes per side. And I'm just removing them. Now you can see we've got a beautiful sort of crust on it. So I'm just setting them aside now, and I'm going to do the second batch. Now what I forgot to mention is I got my butcher to trim most, if not all, of the fat out of the oxtail, because in reality we really don't need all that fat in our diet, right? And I don't know if all of you know attention, but Uncle Chris has been making a conservative effort to try and drop some of that weight that I've put on over the years. So what we're going to do now is just continue with that, adding the pieces in here, and later on, once we're all done browning the pieces of oxtail, any remaining fat, we'll still need about a tablespoon or so in there. We can take a paper towel and sort of blot it out, but for now, just to brown out the rest of them. The other ingredients we'll be requiring is some onion, scallion, fresh thyme and bay leaves, garlic, pimento seeds or allspice, I'm not sure how you call it, tomato paste puree, and that's a concentrated tomato paste, some brown sugar, and of course we gotta use that wine that we just found there. My heat is on medium. I've got about a tablespoon of that oil remaining in there. I did blot some of it out. Onion, garlic, scallion, thyme, pimento berries. I also like adding a bit more black pepper in here as well. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of salt just to help soften up the onion and to help it come along. I'm just going to turn my heat down to medium-low. Just a tiny bit of salt, because remember we did add some salt to the oxtail. And I'll also be using, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier, is some beef stock in braising this as well too, and that will have a sodium element in it. So I'm always mindful of all the ingredients that I use, the salt content and everything else. And this won't take long, maybe about 3 minutes or so, just to get that oil nice and fragrant in there, because we're building, this is sort of the building blocks for the longer lasting flavor, which will all come together in the oven. And again, preheat your oven to 325. Clear a spot in the middle, and to that spot is where you will add your tomato paste puree, and that is a couple tablespoons of that tomato paste puree. And the reason why I cleared the spot there is I want the tomato to be in contact with the bottom of the pot there to sort of caramelize and pull out the sweetness from that tomato paste. Just gonna mix that all around in there. So I really want that tomato paste to sort of toast, sort of caramelize on the bottom. They're releasing that natural sugar that's in there. And you know, it's all about balance as well. So not only is it about the sugars, the natural sugars, there's gonna be a bit of acidity in there as well, yeah? I'm just going to allow that to go for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll continue. Rather than going with Scotch bonnet pepper for that raw heat, for a mild heat, a very delicious heat, I'm just going to add some chili flakes in there. That is totally optional. You don't necessarily have to do it if you don't want to, but I like spicy food, but this won't be incredibly spicy, but it will give me that nice little pick-me-up that I thoroughly enjoy. And you can really smell that tomato and the thyme and everything else. And as it cooks, that's when the garlic is really going to start happening, applying its flavor in there. The allspice berries, all those different flavors will start coming together. Just going to move that around, and we're just going to allow that to sort of cook down and cook out most of the alcohol while maintaining most of that fruity elements of that wine. This is when all of that beautiful oxtail is gonna, drippings and everything is gonna go back into the pot. Of course, you've got to really stir it and bring all those flavors in contact with the oxtail. Yeah. And I know a lot of people probably complaining, oh gosh, Chris, you're using metal in there, and yeah, this is what's comfortable for me, yeah? At the end of the day, it's what's comfortable and makes you comfortable in the kitchen. So I ain't stressing too much. All you want, all your wood spatula, go ahead. Plastic, whatever, go ahead. Kill trees and pollute the planet with all that plastic and, gosh, I can't believe all the butchering trees like that. But anyhow, and this is where we're gonna add that beef stock. And you want it about an inch. I'm gonna add some more. About an inch over the pieces of oxtail, and this way it will braise evenly in there without exposed pieces like that. Of course, later on in the oven, as the liquid dries down, and this is why we're going to put a lid. It's going to help create that steam. Steam is going to create moisture. Moisture is going to go back in there. So it's a sort of a cycle that's going to happen in there. But the point is, this is why you need a nice, invest in one, man, a nice cast iron glaze pot there, proper. As it starts coming up to a boil, I'm gonna add my bay leaves, and of course that balance we spoke about, courtesy of some brown sugar, because again, it's all about balance when you're cooking. So we're just gonna bring this up to a boil at this point, and then we're gonna place the lid on there, because this way, as soon as it gets into that hot oven, it will, continue cooking. So you're kind of helping the oven at this point, but we need to bring it up to a boil. It only took about 4.5 minutes or so on at medium-high heat to come up to a boil, and that's exactly where we want it. We're going to put the lid on, turn off the stove. It's going to go into the oven, middle rack, and again, oven-proof. Everything is oven-proof. What I must mention, these guys, to grab it in and out of that oven, because sometimes, because it's not on the stove, we tend to forget that the sides will get hot, the entire pot will get hot. In about an hour time, you will check the liquid. At the 2-hour mark, you will check the liquid, but we're going for about 3 to 3.5 hours in total. But we'll just need to check on the liquid level. It's been about an hour or so. So I'm just gonna show you guys quickly what we got going on. And there we go. Yeah, just keep an eye on the liquid level as it happens in there. You may need to add some more liquid, but make sure if you're adding liquid, just gonna put the lid on. Make sure you add hot liquid. It's been just over 3 hours, and this is where we at right now. I did end up going in at the 2-hour mark, and I added an extra 2 cups of beef stock to things. So at this point, what I'm going to do is a couple things. One, I'm going to taste it and determine whether or not the salt is to my liking. The other thing is, I did clean the spoon, if you guys are wondering. I did wipe it out. I'm just going to hit that a quick little stir and determine whether that gravy is to my liking or not. And notice how it's going to braise down there. What we can do is remove the bay leaves at this point. They've done their job. Well done. Job well done, fellas. Out you come. What I want this to do is to thicken up just a little bit more. Yeah, there's another bay leaf somewhere in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it back. Oh yeah, make sure it's fork tender. And I know this is fork tender because, if you notice, we've got a bone there. Yeah, that's going to come, boom, into the rubbish there. But anyhow, I'm going to leave it open for about 10 minutes in the oven. But before I do, I'm going to hit that with some chive along with some parsley. And I'm going to hit that a quick stir back into the oven just to thicken up just a little bit. And yeah, we eating. Chris here, CaribbeanPot.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. And what I have it served here with is with cuckoo, corn cuckoo. You've got to head over to CaribbeanPot.com for that recipe. But I do hope you guys get an opportunity to give this one a try. And you can see I'm pairing it with that Narai cadence as well too. So what we cooked with, it's what we're enjoying it with right now. And there's a lovely feature in this month's Vintages magazine. Down in the center. Look at that centerfold thing, boy. Anyhow. And there's Steve. And you can read all about him and the fine wines that he's making consistently past number of years. part 2 of the corn mutton series, and I mentioned in part 1 that we'll be doing 3 parts. So this is the other half of the can of corn mutton. And again, if you want to check out the full series, you've got to be on youtube.com/Caribbean Pot. I'm not sure where you're watching this currently, but all I'm doing, dry non-stick pan. We spoke about the fat content and the salt content and everything else in the corn mutton, and you know, it is very similar to how you would use corn beef, right? All that fat there, that's gonna sort of, wait a minute, turn on the people's stove, Uncle Chris. You doing cooking show, you ain't turn on the flicking stove. Anyhow, that fat is gonna render out, and this is gonna be the base for cabbage. And it's a great way to stretch this or corned beef, corn mutton or corned beef, either will work. Even luncheon meat or canned pork, spam, all those different things. Just be mindful, the salt content and everything else. Just don't make it too regular on your diet. As with everything else, moderation is key. Yeah, but all those different things I mentioned, they will be able to add some lovely flavor to your cabbage. Now I am just using cabbage. I've got half of a large onion, 5 cloves of garlic that I smashed, some black pepper, and of course half of a Scotch bonnet pepper. If you wanted to add carrots in here, you can. Totally up to you. I may add a couple cherry tomatoes. I'm not too sure yet, but we'll see. But anyways, we want it on a medium flame just to render out some of that fat and to sort of crisp up some of the edges of the, and you know what I like about the corn mutton, lately the corned beef that we're getting is all mush. Here you can see strands or shredded mutton meat in there, which, yo, better than that mushy stuff. It won't take long for that to happen, maybe 3 minutes or so, and you can see all that fat on the bottom there. That's sort of sizzling that you're seeing, that's all fat. So at this point you're going to put in your shredded cabbage into here. Yeah, I'm just going to scrape off my spoon. Just going to hit that a little stir just to make sure we start sort of deglazing the bottom of the pan here. And that cabbage is going to let off a lot of water due to the steam that will be created here, so don't fret too much. And the last thing I want you all to do is to overcook the cabbage as well. So at this point, yeah, mind the noise, it's black pepper time, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of salt, nothing too heavy because, yeah, high in sodium, right? So we are trying to double up the dose. Just a tiny bit of salt, the onion, Scotch bonnet pepper, and of course that garlic. The printable recipe for this entire series will be available at CaribbeanPot.com, as I always share those classic homely Caribbean meals. Whole idea now is to just let that all come together on that sort of medium-low flame. And again, I don't want to overcook. And this is why, you know, you can add the carrots and everything else, because essentially it's almost like a vegetable chow mein you're making here. But I don't want to overcook the cabbage is essentially what I'm saying as well too. But I want that onion and the garlic and everything else. Now, if you wanted to add the onion and garlic whilst you started, when you started with the corn mutton, you can do that as well. I just find that it really doesn't make a difference too much. It's been about 5 minutes and you can see it's already starting to wilt down, it's starting to soften up. And here's where you can control things. You will taste it and adjust the salt, 1. 2, you will continue cooking this longer or determine how you like your cabbage. I want this for about 3 more minutes. Nothing more than 3 more minutes. Now here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, what I forgot to mention, I may have mentioned earlier about adding carrots in there, but bell peppers and all those things as well will work great in here. Again, another means or another method of clearing out your fridge of odds and ends that you may have with vegetables in there. Yeah. At this point, I have some little cherry tomato that I cut into half. That is optional. You don't need to do that. But I find the bitter acidity it gives me an opportunity to use them. I had it in a salad last night, and that is what's left over. So the acidity, perfect. A little sweetness as well too. And you know that cabbage, whether you want to admit or not, does have a natural sweetness about it as well, yeah? And I like adding in the last couple of minutes. You know, like I said, I'm gonna have this go for about 2 or 3 minutes more. So I like adding the tomato at this point so it doesn't disintegrate in there, and it keeps that nice little acidity and freshness and sweetness and everything else without mashing up, you know what I mean? But anyhow, 2 more minutes. Sup, soldiers? Listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me, email address down here. I mean, trying to tell people the email address, them butts will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pod. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irie. Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. Part 2 of 3 of my corn mutton series. I hope you all get an opportunity to give this one a try. Stay tuned for the 3rd and final version of the corn mutton series. And of course, do go to youtube.com/CaribbeanPod and check out recipe 1. Irie? Say about a tablespoon and a half of vegetable oil. Excuse me, just reach over. Just gonna move it around in my hand there. And what we're doing today is I have some leftover. If you saw that video, I think a few days ago, it was tandoori chicken. Now I have the bones and everything on there. I cut it up into maybe 1.5 inch pieces because I wasn't going to debone it and all that stuff like that. But we're gonna make, and I have some leftover rice from dinner last night. So for lunch today, I'm making a tandoori chicken fried rice. Oil, and of course in making this with more flavor, I'm going to add more of that tandoori spice in there. And I just want this to sort of heat through a little bit, just to bloom the flavors of that tandoori spice. As that starts heating through, I'm going to go in with some garlic because I want more pronounced garlic flavor in the rice. Yeah? The whole idea is to flavor the other ingredients with the main flavor, which is that tandoori spice blend that you get that tandoori spice blend as we discussed before at any progressive East Indian grocery stores. I have here a combination of bell peppers, onion, and celery, and it's the leaves and everything. I want that to go in here now because I want that to sort of take on the flavors that we're seeing there. Along, when we add that chicken in there, it's going to add a ton of flavor as well. My heat is on medium, by the way. In goes all of those vegetables. And you can pretty much add anything you want to add in there. It's totally up to you, yeah? So what I'm going to do now is hit that with stir. And the reason why I like adding that garlic in there, because I find that, and you can add some grated ginger as well. It's totally up to you. I just want, and in making the tandoori chicken, I added a ton of garlic and ginger in there. If you want this really spicy, you can add your scotch bonnet or your habanero. Some people crazy. I'm just going to turn my heat down a little bit. There's that Kashmiri chili powder really shining through there, boy. But if you want to add scorpion pepper in here, if that's your thing, I mean to say, do your thing, right? So we're just going to let that sort of soften up for me about a minute or two, nothing more. Now time to add all of that chicken in there. And you can do this with any sort of rotisserie chicken or roasted chicken you may have available at home. And like I said, big chunks. So instead of the rice, if you don't want to make fried rice as I'm making here, if you wanted to use noodles, yeah, you can make it into a tandoori chicken sort of stir fry with noodles and everything else like a chow mein, yeah? I'm just going to let that warm through because it was all in the fridge. And speaking about warm through in the fridge, I have my rice in the fridge, and we've talked about this because I love making fried rice and sharing it with you guys. with you all is when you chill the rice, it gives you a more grainy sort of texture later on. And I mentioned earlier there that the bones and everything is still on that chicken, and I lost a piece of pepper there, and I think an onion went flying. But if you wanted to debone it and just have the chunks of just pure meat, that's cool. Just remember, whoever you're serving this to, remind them that they will encounter bones in there. It's been about 3 minutes since I added the chicken in there, and you can see everything's taking on that lovely tandoori color from that red Kashmiri chili powder. But anyhow, all we need to do now is pretty much add the rice in there. And yo, I know you're watching and probably thinking, well, Chris, no salt. Well, the chicken was cooked in salt, the rice was cooked in salt, but of course we've got to compensate for the bit of vegetables, the onions and peppers and everything else that we added in there. I managed on a low sodium diet purposely because I ain't trying to deal with the high blood pressure and all the sort of associated ailments with high sodium diet. So I'm not going to add any, but if you wanted to add some salt here, perfect. Some black pepper, perfect. Totally up to you. And again, remember earlier I said when I added the garlic, you can also add some grated ginger. Time to go in with the rice now. And of course, you're going to stir it. And the whole idea now is to just heat that rice through while coating it with all that lovely tandoori flavor that we have in here. It won't take long. I'm just going to sort of break up the clumps of rice. Again, it was chilled, it was in the fridge, and you get better results as we spoke earlier with chilled day-old rice. Yeah, it's a nice little meal to put together, man. Lunchtime, Uncle Chris eating like a boss. The last thing I want to add is some scallion or green onions in there. I'm going to give that a stir, turn off the pot, and let the residual heat soften up that green onion for me. ChrisCaribbeanPod.com. This, once you have access to that tandoori chicken, I've showed you all how to do this with leftover jerk chicken in the past. So if you don't have it and you want to make it truly Caribbean, yes, we do have a strong culture of fried rice in the Caribbean, and if you know our history, you'll know why. I'm not here to teach you why today, but anyhow, with that tandoori chicken here, leftover rice, and just look at that. If you want to stretch it for more people, cabbage, more bell pepper. If you want to add mushrooms, bean sprouts, whatever, carrots. You want to add some carrots in there. It's a great way to sort of clean up the fridge of anything that you have left back. Alright? Alright. Ingredients all prepped, and ladies and gentlemen, one of the things I always try to impress on you all with sharing these recipes is that once you prep your ingredients in advance, cooking will be fun and ever so simple. Corned mutton. The name Salisbury. I am not affiliated with the brand. I'm not paid to do this or anything like that, but my good friend, the lady at the front at Passads on Albion out in Toronto, she said this is the best brand, and I have to trust the Guyanese because the Guyanese lady's been doing it for a long time, so she understands the whole corn mutton thing. And this is for people who you want something different. You don't want to use the corned beef, or maybe for religious purposes you're not into the whole beef thing. So corn mutton, it is pricey. This can here 11 ounces, 11.5 ounces, 326 grams. It was about $10, I think. And that's usually the price for it. What I'm going to do, this is a 3-part. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 recipes. Sort of series that we're doing. I'm going to show you 3 recipes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use half of this. We're going to make my version of fried corn mutton. Tomato, garlic, scotch bonnet pepper that I cut into half, 2 quarters. It's a whole pepper I cut into half and then quarters. I'm only using half of a pepper. Onion, some scallion or green onion, I'll need some black pepper and some no salt. I'm not adding any salt because this is usually loaded in sodium. Let's take a peek here. Sodium 350 milligrams, which is 15% per serving of salt. Anyhow, no oil either because it can be a bit fatty. If you want to use oil, you rock your oil, vegetable oil, whatever oil you usually use. But I'm only using half. Yeah, we're gonna do 1 recipe, 2 recipe, 3 recipes. Be good. My saucepan here is on a medium flame, and I really love the people over at what did I say? Posad's over on Albion and Etobicoke. They're out in Toronto. Really nice people, especially the lady out front at the cash register. And I believe they have a spot. So you see, we're using half, the other half, and I'm not going to leave it in the tin. I'm going to put it into a plastic container or something. Or maybe I'll shoot the second video now. She's always nice to me, man. Wonderful conversations about gardening and all that stuff like that. You see that fat? That's the fat I was talking about there. Let me just turn that around. Let me go in with my hands and lift it up and show you all. And this is why that white, that's all fat. This is why I am not starting with any oil in the pan. I want that fat to sort of help us to cook everything. I'm going to use my spoon to break it up. And you know, if this recipe seems familiar to you, it is exactly the way I prepare canned corned beef. A huge hit down in the Caribbean. And you know, while I didn't grow up eating this here, I noticed from my Guyanese friends, they eat quite a bit of this. Well, lately, more than anything else that I've been noticing. What I need to do now, and you see all of that fat has rendered out. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you not to put any further oil or fat into the pan. You really don't need it. Onion. Some garlic, and that is about 5 cloves of garlic that I smashed. The sort of beeping noise you're hearing is doing TikTok at the same time too. The Scotch bonnet pepper, just gonna move that over. A tomato, of course, some fresh ground black pepper in there. And you can eat this with roti, man, my favorite, just steamed or boiled rice. That's it, and you put this on top there. Brilliant things. Anyhow, I do need one more thing in there, and I know some of you will see that, and that's just a teaspoon of tomato ketchup. I like adding some ketchup in there. That's just my kind of thing, yeah. But one of my favorite things is just with plain old rice or hot sada roti. You know, some people don't even know what fry roti is. Everybody thinks fry bake and fry roti is the same thing, totally different, but a topic for another day. But anyhow, you notice everything is coming together nicely, and it's still pretty fatty. So just be mindful of all that fat in here. It's something that, you know, that high salt, the high sodium, the high fat content, we really don't need to be eating this on a regular basis. So it's probably a good thing that it is a little bit pricey, yeah. And all I'm going to do now is allow that onion to soften up, the garlic to flavor things, that pepper, the Scotch bonnet pepper. And again, that's totally optional. If you don't like spicy, you don't have to. But it's something so simple to put together. In goes that scallion. And once everything warms through, you're good. Just going to hit that another final stir there. Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com, part 1 of 3 using corn mutton. So this is a dish here, you know, and if you want to put it on bread, on crackers, whatever you want to do with it. And I like a little bit of texture on the tomato, but you can cook it further if you want. As I mentioned earlier, great with sada roti or fry bake or any of the above. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this now. And this is going to be part of the 3rd recipe that I'm sharing. And that 3rd recipe is fry aloo with corn mutton. So if you have some of this, and it's one of those leftover dishes mommy would make with fried corned beef, but in this case here we'll be using the fried mutton. Go ahead, eat this, totally cool. Later on in part 3, when we do the fried aloo, you'll just need another can of mutton. Part 2 coming up. Stay tuned. coconut shrimp, my first experience with coconut shrimp. And I do apologize, you're gonna notice the stove is really dirty. I don't feel like cleaning the stove, then frying shrimp, and then it's gonna be splatter. And as I mentioned in the chicken wing recipe that I dropped a few days ago, I hate cleaning oil splatter, so I'll do it after. Anyways, my experience with well, my favorite experience with coconut shrimp, and what I have here is 1 pound of shrimp. I think they're 26-30, so medium size, cleaned, deveined, cleaned, and washed with the juice of a lemon. We flew into Montego Bay, Jamaica, and that same night, you know, it was a long flight because there was delays from Toronto and all this thing like that. But anyways, hungry, man, real hungry. Ended up in Ocho Rio. And you know, I think they call it Ochi locally. Ochi. We ended up in Ochi at a bar, and they were serving coconut shrimp. And I'm telling you, boy, there was 3-4 of us or something, and there were a couple left on the plate. And I was watching, I was gauging that thing, trying to go in for the last kill. I still love coconut shrimp, and I make it every so often. You would have seen it way back when on CaribbeanPod.com, but updated recipe. 1 pound of that shrimp, and I want to show you what I did. So they're peeled and deveined, so I deveined it there. I left the tail on just to be able to hold it. You know, aesthetics, you don't have to, it's totally up to you. But what I also did on the bottom, I gave it some cuts. 3 cuts on the bottom, just because what happens is when you fry them, they will tend to curl, and the hopes would by putting those little cuts there, those little slits, and you got to be careful when you're doing it, because yeah, if they were more firm it'd be easier. But the idea behind those cuts is to prevent them from overly curling. Now if you don't mind the curl and you want little poppers like that, you can remove the tail, totally up to you. But in my case here, I went ahead and I gave them those cuts. So again, 1 pound of shrimp. Just gonna give my hand a little wipey wipe. All I give you, and this is totally optional. I am from the Caribbean. I am a born and bred Trinbagonian. I want some Caribbean green seasoning in there, totally optional. That it just adds a nice little herbal note to the shrimp. You don't need to, most recipes don't. Salt, and you will see some people may season the flour. I don't season the flour. I put all my seasoning here, so when you bite through, you're getting this lovely seasoned shrimp. And the seasoning is very simple. Salt, the Caribbean green seasoning, and some fresh ground black pepper. I'm gonna give that a mix, and that is it as far as seasoning is concerned. I'll also introduce you to the other ingredients. We've got plain old flour, which is all-purpose flour. We've got sweetened coconut flakes, yeah, small flakes. I've got panko breadcrumbs, and you gotta head over to CaribbeanPod.com. The full printable recipe for everything here, exact amounts and everything will be listed there. I've got 2 eggs. That is it. You'll need some vegetable oil for frying, and you're good. Hit that mixy mix, and you don't need this to marinate for long. 5-10 minutes and you're good. So as you prep the other ingredients, well, there's really nothing to prep but to whisk the eggs and to sort of put everything. What we're going to do is combine the panko breadcrumbs along with the coconut, the shredded coconut, in one bowl. We're going to mix them together. We're going to put this in a bigger bowl, and we're going to whisk. And if you wanted to add a bit of salt and black pepper to your dredge, which is the flour, it's totally up to you. I'm just whisking the eggs with a fork just to add some air in it and to mix everything together there. Now in my bowl here, I have the all-purpose flour. I'm just gonna shift this over. In goes that panko breadcrumbs, followed by the coconut. And again, that is sweetened shredded coconut, yeah? All you want to do next is pretty much give that a good mix, yeah? Like so. If you wanted to crush some saltine crackers, you can use that if you don't have the panko breadcrumbs. All right, all that's left to do now is you're gonna grab a shrimp, you're gonna dust it in the flour like so. Make sure you cover it, hit them a little shaky shake into the egg, yeah, and finally you gotta shake that out as well. You're gonna toss that in there, dry hand, hit them a little tappy tap like so, And there we go. We've got a perfectly coated shrimp for making coconut shrimp. I've just got my sheet pan there, and I'm just going to set that aside. I'm going to continue doing the same thing. So one more time, just to show you all. Flour, egg, kind of shake off the excess, and then pat. So one hand remains wet, one hand remains dry basically. It will take a few minutes to get them done, but you see, we all dressed up and ready to go into that hot oil now. Whether you use, like I said, vegetable oil, corn oil, canola, it's totally up to you if you want to use lard. Hey, do you think coconut oil? If you have it and you want to use it, by all means. Now, what I forgot to mention earlier, if you don't want to do the egg sort of part of it and you have coconut milk, you can go flour, coconut milk, and then into the combination of the shredded coconut with the panko breadcrumbs. Why do I keep stuttering and pausing every time I say that word? Panko. Oh gosh, Chris, why are you so man? So here's my setup. We're trying to get the vegetable oil to about 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I've got my shrimp, which is all prepared here, of course the oil, and I've got a wire rack over a tray, because I don't want to put these onto, once they're fried, I don't want to put them on paper towel, because then it will create steam and they'll go soggy. By putting it on the wire rack, because I want to do them in batches, maybe about 3 batches, it will allow the air to keep them nice and crisp. And my oil is on a medium-high flame there. And again, you want it about 375. And you just want to put these in. Try not to overcrowd the pan. And they won't take long, 3-4 minutes, maximum 5, and they'll be ready. After a minute and a half, I'm just going to flip them over. And notice they're not curling. That is because of the cuts that we made earlier when I was explaining how I cleaned and deveined them, yeah? And as far as dipping sauce is concerned, you want to keep this simple. All I have is a store-bought Thai chili sauce. That's it. Nothing fancy, nothing spectacular. And notice how quickly the color is coming on. And if you know anything about shrimp, they cook very quickly. So, and the other thing you want to keep in mind is you don't want to overcook it, because then it becomes chewy and rubbery and stuff. It's going to be quick now. And notice this beautiful golden color we got. And what I've found over the years in making this is, as they cool, they will darken up a little bit more. So just be mindful of that. Man, are they ever smelling good? And I know for a fact, from experience, I'm going to be enjoying these. Yo man, I love me some coconut shrimp, you know. Quickly removing the second batch, and then the third batch, and then Iman is all done. Make sure you shake off as much of the oil. Now if you wanted to hit it a little sea salt as you remove them out of the oil here, you can certainly do that as well. I really don't rock the high sodium diet anymore, so you know, no more salting going on this, but it is an option, yeah? The other thing is, when I season the shrimp there with that Caribbean green seasoning and salt and black pepper, if you wanted to put a bit of cayenne pepper in there, if you wanted to put a bit of paprika in there, all those different things, onion powder, garlic powder, you can be as creative as you want, but the simplistic way of doing this is what you're seeing here, minus the green seasoning. That's the simple way, and you're pretty much done. That is, you know, it's very simple, but you hit a restaurant and they charge an upwards of $30 for a third, maybe half a portion. Half of this would be a portion, because with the pound, I'm sure you're not getting a pound for the price I just quoted. Coconut shrimp, yo, so easy and so delicious, except you got to put up with this frying smell and the splattering of the oil. But small thing, I just being a little bit overcritical about. I hate the smell of frying food, I'll be honest with you. Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. Hold on, I'll show you how I put it together with that simple Thai sweet chili sauce. Like I said, very simple Thai chili sauce, that sweet chili sauce with the coconut shrimp. Now if you wanted a couple pieces, a couple wedges of lemon in there, you can do that as well. Totally up to you. You don't need to go overboard, because you want the shrimp to speak for itself. Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. I do hope you will get an opportunity to give these a try, man. Going in now. This recipe will not be posted on CaribbeanPod.com because there is nothing Caribbean about it. What it is and what I have here is chicken wings, big chicken wings here. Look at the size of these babies. It's a nice big, look at the drumettes. I'm telling you, boy, what I have here, and I really don't want to cross-contaminate and all that, is chicken wings. I think there is 2.5, almost 3 pounds of chicken wings in there. And what I like doing is brining it for a couple hours. So we've got water, a tablespoon of sugar, a tablespoon of salt, 2 scallions. I've got the Scotch bonnet pepper, you can see, I just cut it in half. I've got fresh thyme and garlic in there. I allow the chicken wings to sort of soak in there or marinate to pull in all those flavors. Yeah, you can see all that niceness is in there. And if you don't believe me with the thyme, there is that thyme. The garlic is down in the bottom down there somewhere. And what this does, it allows for the chicken to be, one, take on a lot of flavor. So this is my sort of seasoning part of things. And 2, it allows it to be nice and juicy once they're fried. I left the wing tips on there. Some people like it, some people don't. I personally don't like the wing tips, but I just left it on there so you can identify what the wing part is, the sort of flap is. But anyhow, you gotta brine it for a couple hours. So now what I'm gonna do is to remove them from the brine and pat them as dry as I can. What we're making is a buffalo style, and this is why I said there's nothing Caribbean about it, buffalo style hot honey wing. I did wash the bowl, the same bowl that it was in, and I dried it. And what I'm doing is using the paper towel now to sort of make sure and try and get most of that moisture. And it's because we had that salty sugar, the sort of balanced brine. You're gonna see it's gonna really release a lot of liquid, yeah? So as best as you can dry them, and then toss them into the bowl there. And the reason for tossing it into the bowl is because I've got another step I like doing. And this is a recipe well, not a recipe, something I teased on Instagram quite a while ago, and everybody was, yo, man, Chris, you gotta share it. Uncle Chris, come on, you're holding back on the recipe. So I thought, you know, Super Bowl is this weekend. All of this is gonna go into the rubbish, yeah? Put this down here. I thought with the Super Bowl around the corner, why not share it? And again, it won't be posted on CaribbeanPod.com. So next up, I've got the remnants of my cornstarch. And the reason for the cornstarch now is because once we make, and I'm making a mess in my kitchen now with this cornstarch. Once we make the hot honey sauce that we're gonna toss these in, when we fry it, what's gonna happen is gonna help it be more crispy. Plus, on the exterior here with the cornstarch, it's gonna suck up that hot honey buffalo sauce, yeah? So all I'm gonna do is go ahead and toss this. And I'm just gonna leave it in the bowl. Just gonna get it in my hands because I wanna make sure it's all coated with that cornstarch, yeah? Let's jump into making the hot honey sauce now before we fry these off. Now, as far as the hot honey sauce, that sort of buffalo sauce that everyone tends to like, I've got 3 tablespoons of butter in there, 3 tablespoons of, well, 2.5 tablespoons of hot sauce, and that is just Frank's, just plain old Frank's hot sauce. I am not the biggest fan of it because I find there's too much vinegar. And I have my, you can use just plain old honey, totally cool, but I have my habanero infused honey that I'm just gonna put in there as well too. So pretty much almost equal parts of everything. And my stove is off. I guess I'm gonna have to make some more of that hot honey. Hot honey. And all you would do, you would turn your stove off and on at this point on a sort of a medium-low temperature. And you just want to melt that butter and combine all those flavors in here. I'm using salted butter, so I don't have any use for adding salt in here, but if you want to add a pinch of salt, by all means do that. And it won't take long. You just want to sort of combine, make sure that butter melts and combine everything. You can see it's already starting to come together. Oh man, does it ever smell like very vinegary? That Frank's, I tell you. Frank, too much vinegar rasta. Anyhow, you see what's going on here. Now if you want to put some pepper flakes in there, some cayenne powder and stuff like that, you can certainly do that, but this is the most common way to do this. I was about to say basic, but basic sometimes is all you need. So we're just going to give this another minute until everything comes together, and then we're going to start frying those wings. Yeah, so I'm quite happy with what I have here. I'm just going to move this off this burner, put my frying pan here now, and just look at that. Proper things, boy. I mean, as if I was doing a Caribbean version of this, you know, your boy was going crazy with these Scotch bonnet and all kind of jerk flavors and all kind of, yo man, even a masala flavor. But for now, this is what you get in, because this is what you asked for on the Instagram. All right, push you aside, and we're gonna put the frying pan there. And you may use any oil you like using. I am just using a vegetable oil. Well, the last of Uncle Chris vegetable oil going in this here. But fear not, I'm from the Caribbean, so you know I'm straining this oil after, filtering it out, and I'm using it again for frying my little fish and thing. Anyhow, medium high heat. You want your oil anywhere from 325 to 350 Fahrenheit, yeah? Now if you can deep fry these, I'm sort of shallow frying it because it's all the oil that I have left. And I like doing the drumettes first because they tend to be bigger. I don't want to crowd them, but if you can deep fry them, it'll be a lot better because you get more even cooking. So what I'm going to do is about 5 to 7 minutes on this side, and I'm going to flip them over and, you know, cook the other side until they're nice and crispy. I may go a little bit longer, but it depends on how big the chicken wings are. But again, 325 to 350 and you will be good. Now I'm not sure if you all can see it, but I'm getting a slight crust on the outside, and that is from the cornstarch that we dusted the wings in. And it's only been about, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, but I'm already getting there, a lovely crust. Because what's going to happen is, with that crust, the sauce, that hot honey sauce, a buffalo hot honey sauce, is going to adhere or stick to it a lot better. They're fully cooked. I got a nice crust on them, beautiful color. So what I have here is my bowl. I'm going to be tossing them in. I'm just going to give them a quick shake as I take them out. Toss them into the bowl, and you hear that? You hear that? Ha ha! And they're in the bowl here. And the reason for the bowl, the metal bowl especially, is because I'm going to toss them in the sauce in there now and get ready to enjoy. But we still got that other batch there that still needs to go. So there we go, we've got them there. I'll quickly share something with you all, very personal. But you notice all the splattering and everything that's happening all over the kitchen floor and all that? I hate cleaning up after frying, anything grease related. So very rare do I make fried foods like this. So maybe this is why I need to invest in a deep fryer where everything will be confined in there. But for now, we've got the second batch. I'm just going to hit them a little flip because they're starting to firm up a little bit, and I want the coloration to be even. Yeah? Usually you'll find that the flats will take less time to cook because they will have, well, they're flat, and the shape of them helps for frying easier. Just going to turn my heat down a little bit, tossing them into the same bowl that I have there. Then it's just a matter of using half of the sauce to toss them in, and the other half I'm going to serve it. Well, technically I'm not eating any of this. My daughter is eating this because I'm making curry stew wings for me. Totally different. Stove off. On goes that sauce. And then I'm going to hit them a nice toss just to finish off things, yeah? Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. Again, not a Caribbean recipe, but something very much requested after I shared Well, I teased it on Instagram. A couple days ago, I shared a video all about starfruit or carambola on my secondary channel, which is Food FAQ on YouTube, and I promised you all 2 recipes on that channel. This one here, it's starfruit kuchula or anchar. I will be more closer to an anchar than anything else, and the ingredients are very simple. Of course, I've got the starfruit, and I used 3 of them, and I sliced them about 3/4 centimeter thick, and I had it in the oven at 175 for about an hour and 30 minutes, or an hour and a half, or 90 minutes, just to sort of dehydrate them. Because what I want is, typically you would put it in the sun. There's no sun. We haven't seen the sun in Canada, well, in Ontario, for at least 15 days. It's very overcast. It's the middle of winter. But if you have access to the sun, you would put it for about a couple hours out in the sun. So I kind of replicated the sun in the oven, so it's sort of dehydrated. You'll also need Scotch bonnet pepper. I've got 4 Scotch bonnet peppers here. I've got Anchar masala, and I know the first question is, Chris, which brand? I love Chief brand Anchar masala. A great reason to visit your local West Indian grocery store or shop online, or if you're in the Caribbean, most grocery stores will have it. We'll need salt, garlic, and the garlic is rough chopped, the pepper is rough chopped, and in my magic bullet I have about 1.5 cups of vegetable oil. What I'm going to do is put the garlic and the hot peppers in there, give it a puree with a bit of texture, and then we'll proceed. But these are all the ingredients that we need here for this starfruit or carambola anchar. I know some of you say achar. I grew up calling it anchar, and I'll continue. I've got a nice wide pan, no heat yet, and I'm going in with that puree. Now here's the thing, it may seem like a lot of oil that I used. I'm just going to turn the stove on. We don't want it on a high flame, sort of a medium-low flame, because I don't want this to be too vigorous in here. I just want to cook out the rawness of the pepper and the garlic, and in doing so flavor that oil. Now it may seem like a lot of oil that I'm using, but part of the appeal of this anchar is the oil itself. So you're gonna, when you're eating your nice curry dish or whatever, and you take a couple pieces of the once it's all done, the starfruit, you also want to take maybe a teaspoon of that oil and drizzle it all over that curry as well too. So we're just going to bring this up to temperature. Once we start seeing little tiny bubbles on the side, we're just going to lower the heat and let it gently cook for about 5 to 10 minutes. Now here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, please vent your kitchen. Again, it's the middle of winter here, so the house is entirely closed. So if you hear me turn on that fan, I apologize for the noise, but I'm not trying to choke out here. And you can see the bubbles that I'm talking about. That I don't want it vigorous, I just want to cook out the rawness. Now to pull out more of that flavor from that garlic and that pepper, of course we need salt, and we will also need the salt to help balance off the tartness of the starfruit. And you know what I forgot to mention earlier, overly ripe starfruits will not be good for this. It'll be a bit too sweet. You want something a bit more tart. So thus, using more of a green, not fully mature starfruit will give you a better result. I'm going to shake this around a bit, and I just want to cook out a bit of the rawness, as I said, and in a few minutes I will also add the Anchar masala in there to allow the spices which makes up that Anchar masala to bloom as well and flavor. Now here's the thing, some people like adding shadow benny, which is culantro, in their anchar or kuchula. Did I just say kuchula? Oh my god, what kind of kuchi? Hey, where your mind is today, brother? Anyhow, I don't like it, so I'm not putting any. But if you want to put shadow benny, by all means chop some up and put in there. Now the first thing you're probably wondering is, how come Uncle Chris is not putting mustard oil in the anchar? And I want you all to see something. It says mustard oil, and at the very back here it says for external use only. Yeah, do some research, hit that Google. Google is all your friend, not just for searching pong pong. No, you don't, no. Search Google mustard oil and do some reading. This is why I don't put mustard oil in my kuchela nor my Anchar. Alright, now you know. Just gonna turn off the fan there so you can hear me properly. It's been about 4 minutes. What I have is the Anchar masala, so that's gonna go in here now. And we're gonna continue cooking this down just like I said, we want to bloom all those flavors, and not just bloom it, but have them come together harmoniously. Listen to that now, harmoniously. Of course, you want to make sure you stir this really good and coat all of the pieces of that stuff with that lovely Anchar base that we created there. I'm going to continue this for another 10 minutes or so, and then allow it to cool. Once it's completely cool, you can put it into your containers that you'll be storing it in. It doesn't need to go into the fridge. This will keep for, at least a couple months on your stovetop. Well, not your stovetop, but your countertop in your kitchen. Yeah? But the whole idea now is to sort of allow, and this is why we sort of dried the star fruit in the oven, is to be able to suck in all of those flavors that we have in there. So I'm just gonna make sure everything is nicely coated and just let it do its thing in the pot here. Sup soldiers? Listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me. Email address down here. I mean, trying to tell people the email address, then bots will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pod. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irie. 30 minutes later, I think I may have sent 10 minutes earlier, but 30 minutes later, what I have here, ladies and gentlemen, carambola or starfruit Anchar. I'm just gonna make sure I give another stir before I turn off the stove. And remember that oil I was talking about there? That is pure delightful. Yo man, I'm telling you, your curry is gonna love you when you pair it up with this thing here. Allow it to cool and put it into, I wouldn't recommend a plastic container because the plastic will take on the sort of flavors that you have in there. A glass container would be great. And make sure all of that oil, everything goes in there. Allow it to cool first before you close it up though. Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. Starfruit or carambola Anchar. I hope you get an opportunity to give this one a try. Irie? In Trinidad and Tobago, during pigeon peas season, mommy would use this to thicken the sauce of the gravy of curry pigeon peas. And we would also make a lovely vegan or vegetarian dish using the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, this in Trinidad and Tobago is called tanya. In other parts of the Caribbean, it's called cocoyam. I'm almost certain in Jamaica that is what they call it. And it's a root vegetable, a tuber. And it grows like cassava and eddos and dasheen and yam and everything else in the dirt, like a potato for North Americans. It grows in the dirt, down in the dirt like a potato. And I have it all prepped here. And what you need to do is, first of all, the skin, once you remove it, may have a sap which may want to irritate your hands once in contact. So wear gloves or put some vegetable oil in your hands, rub it around, and there's going to be a protective layer on your skin. And all you need is a paring knife or a potato peeler, or you can, and I'm going to peel it, but you can also scrape it with a knife if you wanted to. This is the bottom part here. I'm just going to take that off, and you're going to take just the skin. So you're going very shallow, like if you're peeling an apple, or, well, some people peel carrots. I don't peel carrots. And you can see there's some imperfections there, so I'm just going to use my knife, and this is why I like using a paring knife. All you're going to do is remove that skin like just like that. And once the skin is removed, this is when your hand is going to get in really contact with that sort of sap. I went ahead and I cut it up into small pieces, and I have two size pieces here, a bigger piece which is about 1 centimeter thick, and others which is about 1/2 centimeter thick. Totally up to you how you do it. And the reason for that is I want the smaller pieces to melt to thicken the sauce with the gravy, and the bigger pieces to give it a bit of texture. And I have it in water here simply because I don't want it to discolor. Once we start cooking, I'm going to drain that water out. So that is how you would prepare the tanya for cooking. Now this is going to be a fully vegan, fully gluten-free, fully vegetarian ITAL dish. But there's a curry version of this where mommy would put salted fish, salted cod in there. She also put it in this version as well. But if you're interested in the curry version with the salt fish in there, drop me a comment down below and we'll get to it sooner or later. I've got a sort of a deep pot on a medium flame. I'm gonna go in with some olive oil. If you want to use coconut, hello oil, you sleeping? What's going on? Anyhow, if you want to use coconut oil, vegetable oil, whatever oil you're comfortable using or like using, yeah, you need about 1.5 tablespoons, and I want you to pay attention to my pot here, my clay pot. It's been glazed. Glaze missing, and that is because it's one of those things in the Caribbean when we're cooking, after we done stirring, we do that knock. Yeah, on a Dutchy pot, fine, but on these pots, and you think I learned my lesson? Look, I repeated it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Man, I'm telling you. So we've got onion, garlic, and a Scotch bonnet pepper, a small one. This is totally optional. I just cut it in half. If you want it spicy, you can put it in. You know, if you don't have access to Scotch bonnet pepper, any sort of spicy pepper that you enjoy using or you can access readily, go ahead and use it. I'm going to allow this to go for about 3-4 minutes until the oil is nice and fragrant, the onion is soft, the garlic is nice and soft, and then we'll continue. The kitchen is already smelling wonderful with that garlic and onion combination. What I want in here now is some fresh ground black pepper. Give that another quick stir. And let that go for another minute. At this point, I'm going to add all of the tanya to the pot. And I'm going to hit that a stir. Just to coat it with the oil and all that onion and garlic and everything else. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this will not be a pretty dish. There's no way to make this look pretty. It's going to take on the sort of visuals of a porridge almost, but I assure you there'll be more texture to it than porridge. And mommy would usually make it and serve it with roti or fry bake or fry roti. Any sort of combination like that is something you would dip and scoop and eat with your hands. Of course, you'll need salt. And the printable recipe, as with all of my recipes, will be available at CaribbeanPot.com. We'll need water to sort of cook it to make it nice and soft. I'm gonna just put maybe a 1/4 cup more water in here just to make sure everything is covered. Just using my spatula business here to scrape the bottom of the pot to remove any sort of fond, because there's a lot of flavor there. We're gonna bring this up to a boil, reduce it to a rolling boil, and we're gonna cook it until the tanya is nice and tender and it's going to start falling apart. It's going to thicken up that sauce with that gravy there, and near the end I'm going to finish it off with some tomato and some parsley just to brighten it up just a little bit. I've got to try to make it visually pleasing. Now the tomato will bring a little bit of sweetness and some acidity to balance off all. It's all about balance. If you've been following me for any time, I've been doing this since 2009, so if you've been following me, you know it's all about balance when it comes to flavors. It's been going on that rolling boil for about 25 minutes now, and you can see it's starting to fall apart. And this is why earlier I mentioned that I purposely cut some pieces thinner than others, because I want that to fall apart a bit, and that is going to start thickening up the sort of sauce that we have at the bottom there. What I like doing at this point is to add some tomato as well as some chopped parsley. Totally optional, again, something mommy wouldn't do, but I like doing it just to brighten it up a little bit. Earlier there when I was stirring it, you would have seen that it's time to fall apart and get nice and thick. It's nice and tender. It's pretty much cooked, so I'm going to give this another 5 minutes and then we'll taste it for salt, because we're not going to taste it for salt at this point because we just added a tomato, which would require a little bit of salt as well too. You can see it got nice and thicker there already, and the more you stir it and everything else, keep in mind that whatever pot that you use will have residual heat and will further thicken this as it cools down. This one is a clay pot which will retain a lot of heat. So I'm just going to give this another minute. At this point I'll taste it for salt, adjust the salt to my liking, and we're pretty much done. Make sure you have some nice hot sada roti, or go down to the Caribbean restaurant if you cannot make it and buy some paratha or bus up shot roti, and you're good to go. A lovely vegan or vegetarian dish. I tell I sorting all it out too, and again it's gluten free. So yo man, I'm telling you, don't be turned away by the look of it. The look of it isn't all that airy, yeah, but I'm telling you boy, a nice little something to dippy dip and enjoy. Airy, a nice hot cup of Milo, Ovaltine, or if you have it, a little soursop leaf tea, and you're good man. Breakfast right here. Lunch, dinner, anything you want to do. It's totally up to you all, yeah?